Hello and welcome back to this bonus video. At this point, you should have completed building our Pokemon Chrome extension. It should look something like this. And I just wanted to make this bonus video for you to start thinking about some things that developers kind of go into after they have really built a project. Okay, so at this point, we've built the project. It looks great. But the next step is how can we actually improve this code and improve our project as a whole? So I want to give you some insight. This isn't really a tutorial on coding really, but I want to help you make this project your own and see what developers would do at this point to improve. So to be completely open and honest, I built this project in probably, I don't know, a couple hours originally, and I probably didn't take every precaution to make things as smooth and streamlined as possible, but that's part of what we do as developers is we sort of just like hack it together so that it works, and then we clean up our code after that. Obviously, we want to try to write as clean of code as possible while we're doing it, but sometimes, you know, there's just improvements that we can make outside of that. So before I get into the improvements of the code, I did just want to mention that at this point you have this project. You can certainly add it to your portfolio. However, it would look better if you added some additional features of your own. So maybe you add, I can just give you a few ideas, but obviously be creative. There's a lot of stuff in this Poke API that you can interact with. And obviously, as you've seen, as we've gone through some of the data, there's just a ton of stuff that we have not actually looked at. So I would say first and foremost, you can go through the API, look at all the information that is in there, and try to incorporate some of that inside of the Chrome extension. There's just so many different things you can do here. The other things I would say is you could add some buttons to maybe like select, you know, maybe switch to another Pokemon. Maybe you can save these Pokemon in local storage. If you've never used the local storage API, that is a pretty cool one. I'll just see if I can find it here really quick with local storage. I probably should put a space in there. So local storage, you know, you can use this to store information between sessions. So maybe you can store some Pokemon cards in there. You know, like I said, maybe a button to like get the next one instead of having to close it and reopen it. There's just a lot you can do to add to this. You could change the styling. You could add maybe more moves in here or anything else. But I think it would be a good practice now that you have this project working to actually add some functionality to it. And then you can add this to your resume. And of course, you'll have some customization that you have done to this project. So definitely take some time to play around with this and make it your own. Now, what I wanted to talk about now is really some improvements that we can make to the code. And obviously, there's tons of them that we could make. And this is very opinionated. However, I'm going to give you some things that I thought about while going through this code, some ways that I could improve it. The first thing that I was thinking about was a lot of our HTML and CSS. So throughout this project, I primarily used IDs, which is great. But what we start to see is that it just gets very cluttered with IDs. And honestly, we do sort of need to use a lot of these. But probably not all of them. Okay, so anywhere that we're changing the data, like the name, the HP, any of this stuff where we change the data, we probably want an ID because it makes it easier for us to select. If I go to set Pokemon, it makes it easier for us to select the DOM nodes based on IDs. We can do that with a class name or even tag names, and there's other ways to do that. However, because IDs can only be used for one HTML element, it makes it easier to change, you know, the attack 1 name versus the attack 2 name. It's still possible if we use class name, but I think it's just a little bit easier with the IDs. But I think some of the places where we could have substituted some class names in here are for styling. So for example, we have this title and title here, okay? And it makes sense. We have the IDs and we're going to use those in our JavaScript to update everything. But we could use a class name here. So if I select both of these, I could do like class equals, and let's just say it's like attack title. right? So it's more generalized. And if we go to our CSS where we have these, if you notice in our CSS, what we did was we did like, let's see, did I even use that attack title? It's probably a bad example then. But we had like attack 1 and attack 2, right? And they both have the same CSS. So let's find where that is, attack 1 and attack 2. So we could really just change these to attack. And instead of an ID, we could use a class name. And these we're not using in our JavaScript. I'm sorry, we need a class. I'm used to React, and we use class name in React. So, but yeah, so let me erase this. And so on these, we could use attack. Now, if I reload this, it's going to be all messed up now, right? Because I just changed the ID. So if I go back to my CSS where we had attack 1 and attack 2, instead of these IDs, I can use just the class identifier of attack. And then there we go. There we go. We're back to it. So it's not a huge change. We are saving a little bit of code. However, it is for readability purposes. It may be a little bit easier because we can see like, oh, okay, everything that has this class is going to look the same. So anywhere on here that we have duplicated information like these and the ones on the bottom, we can use class. And we did that inside the project for some of these, right? We use the ability class here. So just something to think about. You can start cleaning up some of the code that way. Some other improvements that we could make is having a dummy default data. So here, if you notice, like there's a fraction of a second where you can see all of this information, and that may not be like the best user experience. I mean, we could certainly just erase it. But we might think about, maybe we have like a default, like a Pikachu or something that we have there, something like that, just to change it so that it's not generic. Okay. So yeah, that's an improvement there. And then the other things really, I mean, CSS, we can go through all of these and change these to class names and identify them a little better. It's not like a huge issue. We save like a little bit of code, but not big. I think some of the other improvements that we can make are inside of our JavaScript. So one thing that I noticed is, I set up these functions just to be excessively clear of what we're doing, but they may not be entirely necessary. And there's ways that we could probably simplify this. So for example, here's some ways that I can see right now off the bat. So first of all, we have this array that's called current Pokemon attacks. And we also have this object that's current Pokemon. Instead of separating these, we could have just added our moves directly into our current Pokemon. So for example, instead of how we have it here, we could have done something like this. Current Pokemon equals, and then remember that's an object. So we could we're just going to spread out what we have in that object. And then we could do like attacks, something like that. And then we could put an array in here that's move 1, move 2, right? So what we're doing here, and I would obviously remove that at this point, is we're just saving some memory, saving some variable space here. So we could remove this. And then anywhere that we had, let's see, current Pokemon. So all these where we see the little line, what we could do is, so current Pokemon attacks. So these are all going to change to, now it would be current Pokemon dot attacks at that value. Right, still works. So just a little bit of cleanup, like we're removing a variable there and just putting everything in that Pokemon. It's a little bit easier to conceptualize, I guess, too. The other things that I noticed that I could probably improve upon is this shuffling of ID. Like this function, it's great for when you're learning, but it's probably not entirely necessary. I mean, if I was going to be using this somewhere else, I could create like a utility function out of this and use it in multiple places. That makes sense. But in this case, we're really only using it in one spot, right? We're only using it for this right here. And in reality, I don't even really need to like create a new variable, right? I could simplify this whole function just like this. ID equals that, right? Because we already set the ID. And so I could just reset it here. And then when I'm thinking about it, it's like, why can't I just take this line of code and paste it here instead of having a function call? I mean, it is sort of, it does explain a little bit what's going on better, but we save some code just by doing that. Okay, still works the same. But all we did was remove that function and just update the ID inside the fetch Pokemon. So there's a lot of little improvements that we can typically make. Obviously, this is a small project and there's not too many improvements that need to be done here, but you can see that vanilla JavaScript can be quite cumbersome after a while. I mean, this is a very small project and look at how much code we need just to like set the Pokemon. This is why a lot of developers have tended towards JavaScript frameworks like React and Next.js, which is what we teach inside the Web Dev Incubator. So if you want to understand a little bit more about the modern JavaScript frameworks, I would definitely suggest getting into that program as well. But with that, I hope you enjoyed this project. Thank you so much for hanging out and going through this with me. I hope this gave you like a really good understanding of the basics of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And if there's anything that you think we should improve, certainly let us know. If you do have an opportunity to update this application, this Chrome extension to be your own, by all means do it and share it, because we love to see what you've done. The last thing that I want to do, which is, this is sort of minor, but I just want to show you one other thing with Chrome extensions is, so far, if you recall in one of the first videos, we did this load unpacked where we actually updated and installed, I guess you could say, our Chrome extension, which on mine, it's the second one. And yours should look like this. If you go to your extensions, you probably won't see the little icon here. And you can see in my original one, I have this icon. I'm going to show you why that is before we go. So if I go to the manifest.json, here we set a default icon, which what that does is it sets the icon up here in the taskbar. However, there's other places where this icon appears, like I don't know if, in the details here, it should appear there. And so the reason I'm not seeing that here is because there's some other thing that we can add to our manifest, which will show where these icons are. So if you notice, these are different sizes. And so there's another functionality that we can add into, I guess, this manifest, and it's just the icons key value pair. And so if I put in icons and then there's an object, and I can add in different sizes. So there's 16, 32, 48, and 128. These are different icon sizes. Now, ideally, you should create a new icon that matches those sizes. But for us, we can actually just use the one that we have over and over. It doesn't really matter that much. I mean, the pixelation might happen a little bit more, but we have a pretty pixelated app as it is. So, I'm just going to add the other ones that I have, but you can add these. They look like this, right? So 16, 32, 48, 128. If I add those now and then I refresh, now we get the icons here. So if you're looking for that, that's how you do that. There's a lot of other stuff that you can do with Chrome extensions, so I highly recommend you look into it if it's interesting to you. One of the really cool things that we didn't do with Chrome extensions is you can have a Chrome extension interact with the other browser window or the other page that you're on. Really cool functionality there, but it's a little bit more advanced, so I didn't want to go too much into that, but I definitely recommend, if you're into this stuff, to do that. So with that, thank you guys again for tuning in. My name is Russell. I hope you enjoyed this little mini course. And if you did, let us know. Post inside the Code Noobs Facebook group. Let everyone know that you built this app. And we'll see you inside the group. With that, peace and have a good day.